In this fireside conversation, I have the pleasure and the honor of speaking with Christoph Wild. Until last year, and for more than 30 years, Christoph was the CEO of Argor-Heraeus, one of the leading global and Swiss precious metals refiners. Now, he signs as the president of the Swiss Association of Manufacturers and Traders in Precious Metals, so basically the Swiss Precious Metals Association. In that role, he's a key representative of the Swiss precious metals industry, and he is actively working with the industry and other stakeholders, including a variety of NGOs, to support and further improve the health and the standards of the industry. In this discussion, we discuss where some of the industry's problems lie, where some of the stigma against the industry comes from, if and how it is fully justified, and what Christoph and the industry overall are doing to change that. Like with David Tate, the CEO of the World Gold Council, it is clear that the world of precious metals is not black and white, simple, or one-dimensional, and that good solutions require differentiated consideration and discourse. As always, if you enjoy this conversation, make sure to share it with your friends and family, like it, and hit that subscribe button. Enjoy. So Christoph, welcome to Edmonton. You visiting us from Ticino, although you went and visited your hometown in Schaffhausen first, as I understand.
Exactly, yes. Thank you very much, Frank, to receiving me, to having me here in Edmonton. Yes, in fact, I came yesterday from Ticino to Schaffhausen, and now being here together with you. Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. You've been involved in the gold industry for many years. That's why you live in Ticino, where and we'll talk about that a bit later. Where a big part of the world's gold industry exists. The biggest refiners are in Ticino, close to where you live. How did you originally get into that world of the gold industry? How did that happen originally?
I come from the bank, from Union Bank of Switzerland, where I used to work in the planning and control department. And as you may know, UBS, the former UBS, was the owner of the gold refinery Argor. And for a project, I was asked to go for 1 year to the Ticino. And well, I have then spent all my professional life in Argor in the gold business.
When was that?
This was actually in '88.
88. So
yeah.
Since '88, you've been
Exactly.
in Ticino, one of the nicest parts of Switzerland,
Definitely.
in the precious metals industry.
Definitely, yes. Ticino then in '88 was quite special. Nobody, or nearly nobody, spoke French or German, my mother tongue.
Yeah.
And my Italian was worse than I couldn't hardly explain myself.
So today you're fluent in Italian and sound
Not
like a
fluent,
Ticinese.
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. So, I mean, one of the things over these years, you've been very much with Argor-Heraeus in Tessin, but now you're in the role of presiding over the Swiss Association of Manufacturers and Traders for Precious Metals. So you retired recently, and you've taken on that role. How has that worked for you?
It's quite exciting. It's an active retirement. I stepped out from Argor last February, in fact, just a year ago. And it was a logical consequence to continue to give a little bit of my experience that I gained in the last 34 years with Argor to the association. We are l'Association Fêtière of the precious metal industry in Switzerland, having 14 members. Our members are responsible for refining and transformation more or less 95% of the gold which is imported in Switzerland. So it's an exciting job, coming from the operating side to the more strategic side of the association.
It's a big change, though. I mean, going from being in the in the operational side to becoming the chairman of that kind of association. How has that worked for you so far?
It's not really a big difference. Well, because also with Argor we had strategic issues to deal with. Fact is now that I have to be impartial. That means I have to care about all our 14 members, where
they used to be competitors. Now
they used to be
become your
competitors.
friends.
Exactly, and they are becoming my friends now. Exactly.
Although I have to, thinking back, to that event that we had in Engelberg was 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a small knit community really, where you guys were very friendly competitors. It seemed like I remember that one time when in the evening after dinner, you guys were all sitting at the table, and it was very friendly. It was not.
It is.
Not bad at all.
In fact, we have the same ideas regarding the main issues of the industry. There is especially security for our people, the security for the precious metal that we treat for our customers. So there are a lot of common things we have to deal with, and therefore, yes, we are competitors. We have been competitors. Now we are friends at the end.
If you look at your role now at the association, what do you see as your core mission and kind of the core initiatives, key initiatives and projects that you're currently thinking about and spending time on?
Well, first of all, I understand my role as I try to be a facilitator, a bridge builder between the various stakeholders, especially in Switzerland, but also precious metal industries and international business internationally. So to work together with LBMA, RJC, and other associations as well. But first of all, I try to help to strengthen the Swiss industry place as the precious metal hub in the world. So that means lobbying, let's say, talking to authorities, to the parliament, and create understanding of the public awareness.
And what do you see as when you talk to the authorities in Switzerland, what are the key areas that you see for Switzerland where we can get back a bit of a bigger role, or progress as a place in the world's gold industry?
We have to maintain what we have achieved over the last decades. That means we have to create the right environment for our industry. We are one of the 12 bullion centers of precious metal in the world, and I dare to say that we are, if we have an overall perspective, the most important in the world. Well, this is said by a Swiss, but I think we have to defend this position, and I'm a little bit afraid sometimes if I see discussions as we have about the responsible business initiative for the big groups, if we see some demands from NGOs regarding transparency. So we have to pay attention to not compete on an uneven playing level field, and this is what I try to help to be, or to guarantee that Switzerland remains the precious metal hub in the world.
Keep it competitive. Something that most people, even the Swiss themselves, often don't realize is that precious metals is the second biggest export good of Switzerland after pharma. And I think the 4 big refiners, Argor-Heraeus, Valcambi, Metalor, and Pump, make up more than half of the refining of the world's gold. Is that correct?
It's correct. We do a big portion of the refining and transformation of gold. So these figures are always a little bit tricky, because you have to define what about you're talking. We do more or less 35 to 40% of the gold refining that LBMA refiners do. And this is maybe 30% of the yearly primary production.
Worldwide?
Worldwide,
okay.
yeah.
Okay.
You have to imagine there are more than 70 LBMA good delivery refiners, and I believe there are at least the same amount of non-good delivery refiners in the world. So probably the worldwide installed capacity is 3 to 5 times bigger than the volume which is extracted in the world.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that we might get into later, the fact that most of the gold that exists is already above ground, and generally you don't throw it away. So it's a big part of what the refiners do is really refining in terms of recycling
Exactly.
gold. So
Exactly.
that's something we'll have to get back to maybe a bit
Yeah.
later. Maybe just going a bit into history of Switzerland's position in the gold industry. How did that come about? You know, why are 4 refiners in Switzerland? You know, which Switzerland being actually a high labor cost country.
Yeah, well, I think the answer is quite simple. Switzerland and this precious commodity gold, this matches perfectly together. We have in Switzerland everything to deal with this commodity. It means political stability, we have legal security, we have a well-functioning banking system, logistic system that works, we have skilled workers. So we have everything in Switzerland, and last but not least, we have the proximity to the end customer, to the outlet. That means in the Ticino, where 3 of these 4 or 5 big refiners, Italy used until the late 80s to be the biggest consumer of gold, of physical gold, for their jewelry industry.
Okay.
And in the French part of Switzerland, where we have 2 big refiners, you have the proximity to the watch and jewelry customers. Right. So this is a little bit why Switzerland started to be this special hub for precious metal.
The banks were also heavily involved in the beginning, right? I think
Exactly.
Now they kind of pulled back a bit.
Yeah,
and
yeah. The banks, they used to own these refineries. So UBS, the former UBS, owned Argor. The bank, Swiss Bank Corporation, owned Metalor, and Credit Suisse owned Valcambi. And therefore they were very, very strong in the gold business. They sat in the middle of the chain. They served the mining companies with mining financing tools, and they took off the gold refined by their own refinery, and they sold it to the customers as bank bars. So it was really a 360-degree business the banks started to do.
it was really a vertically integrated, complete ecosystem.
Exactly. So the refiners at that time, they used to be just service centers for the banks. No own marketing, no own structure. They just had to serve to do the industrial work for the banks.
If we go into history a bit, I mean, what happened to, there used to be something called the Zurich gold pool.
Yeah.
Why was that given up? That doesn't really exist anymore, does it?
Well, the London gold pool was the gold hub for trading, for physical storage. And they did, in my opinion, a big mistake when the Bretton Woods system collapsed. They closed down the market for 2 weeks. And the Swiss banks, especially UBS, SBS and Credit Suisse, they reacted immediately and brought the market to Switzerland, because the big producers, as South Africa especially, they had to have a let out of their gold. And so they brought immediately the market to Zurich and established the market.
So when the London gold pool closed or collapsed to some degree, the Zurich gold pool was created.
Exactly.
Why did they close the London gold pool for 2 weeks after Bretton Woods?
Well, I think there was a very high demand for gold outlet, and at that time the gold price was monitored by this Bretton Woods system. It cost, a gold ounce costed $35, and beside this parallel market was created. where the big producers, again, as South Africa, they wanted to sell the gold to a higher price. So London hadn't just enough of gold.
Okay.
And that's why this parallel market was established and was brought to Zurich.
And later, I mean, the market went back to London. How did that evolve? I mean, basically we had the Zurich gold pool, which was a big benefit for the precious metals industry in Switzerland. But then things kind of moved back to London over time for clearing and trading.
Yeah, well, I'm not a historian, but in my opinion, the big mistake, the crucial mistake London did in the late 60s.
We did later.
Switzerland did a little bit later in the 80s to sanify the federal finance system. They abolished the tax exemption of gold and gold coins. So the tax of goods, the Warenumsatzsteuer, was again charged on gold, and this immediately brought this market back to London. It was at that time, if I'm not wrong, more or less 6 or 7% of the value of the gold, and you can imagine this was far too much to be competitive in the international market.
So that was that decision that basically then sent everything to London.
Exactly.
Later we got rid of that tax, but that was too late.
Exactly, in 86. And when we introduced the system of the VAT, the value-added tax, gold was no more taxed again. So
but it was already, the business was already gone.
Exactly. This is, for instance, the same thing. Germany did the same mistake, and therefore the whole market, the gold market of Germany, went to Luxembourg at that time. And Germany is one of the biggest consumers of gold nowadays. So
for its industries.
Yeah.
So maybe going back to, you touched on it before, some of the concerns or problems and challenges that exist and that you share with some of the refiners in particular, but in general has a lot to do with with the fact that gold is often portrayed as a dirty business to some degree, and so what's your take on that? What is your position on that? And also as the chairman of the association, that's probably one of the big topics to be dealing with.
Definitely, yes. This is a very big topic. It's in the top of our agenda to educate the market, to explain to the market what we are doing to make the value chain sustainable and fair. And what I recognize is that the market very often does not know what is behind this business, and therefore you see in the newspapers, you see in the public discussions always the same pictures, which creates this bad image of our industry. And this is something I want to fight against, to educate. It's no way there are things which are bad in the industry. We will maybe talk about later on the artisan small-scale mining problematic is a big issue in our industry, but definitely not everything is bad what this industry brings out.
I think in general, I mean, if you could probably take any sector, we could also take electrical vehicles and lithium batteries. There is as soon as you have industrial processes, there's going to be ecological damage, and that needs to be taken seriously. But in the case of gold, it just seems like the readiness or the interest in bashing the gold industry seems quite large. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's an interesting combination of Switzerland, one of the richest countries in the world. Gold is a commodity which is and was always in the interest of mankind. This gives a very good headline. And the gold industry can stand for everything, as you said before, for wrongdoing in industrial sectors. And therefore, I think the combination gold, Switzerland, rich people, big margins, big gains. This is a headline where you can work on.
It's easy for the blame and
Exactly.
the shame and the envy story
Yeah.
to take traction. There are issues. I mean, especially when you're looking at artisanal mining. Obviously, there's problems around production processes or mining processes that involve mercury or cyanide. So those things need to be taken very seriously. But I think the industry is doing that. The large mines for sure, they go through a lot of work to do processes cleanly. The refining in Switzerland, we do a lot of recycling. I mean, most of the gold, like we said, is above the earth. So therefore, there's a lot of gold that is being recycled from the industries, from jewelries and so on. And I prefer that being done by Swiss refiners that really that do that according to requirements and within parameters that are very strict. All of that is kind of lost on the storyline that some of these NGOs and activists to some degree portray in the news.
Yeah, my words. Me too. I like that we can do this work in Switzerland, where we have strict laws. We have with the Precious Metal Act, Control Act, and law, probably the oldest and the most stringent law in the world regarding precious metal processing. And therefore, yes, I would like very much that we care about doing this, that Switzerland can act as a kind of lighthouse for the whole industry. And we do a lot, in fact. The Swiss refiners, they are leading in all these projects you mentioned. We try to decarbonize, to help the mines to decarbonize. We are involved in small projects regarding artisanal small-scale mining, that they behave more responsible in using mercury, or even better, that they do not use mercury. But these are long processes, so I want a little bit that we immediately want to have the perfect solution. And if we do not have it, that the public starts to complain about the bad refiners, the bad industry. So we have to work on it. We have to take care about, but it's not good things take time. That's, I think, important to accept.
Yeah, I think in general, what you see is in that culture of blaming and finger pointing is that. The people doing that very often do it in a very one-dimensional way. They don't really look at the story in a deeper, differentiated way. And the world is not black and white. You actually, you sent me a link to that TED Talk.
Yeah.
I forget the lady's name. The title was "The Danger of a Single Story." And she actually goes into that very aspect, that it's very dangerous to have kind of this simple single story view that is black and white, because it does not do justice to the differences in many variables that exist in reality.
Exactly. I like this talk very much, because it shows exactly where the way we shouldn't go. As I said before, there are wrongdoings in the industry. We don't accept this, we work on it. But the danger, the risk of a single story is really, really big, because stories matters. Stories create perception, and perception at the end creates reality. And this is dangerous. So what I would like and what I stand for is that we really address an issue. We try to find where we can improve, and then we act instead of talking. This is maybe a big problem nowadays, that the discussions are done. I like very much that we started a dialogue, but it's very often a blah blah on a very high level. So now let's act. Do the small things, because if we remain here and talking, nothing happens.
But actually, I mean, that's the thing where I'm always amazed is, I've been involved in the precious metals industry for some time now. On the one hand, with our precious metals dealership, BFI Bullion. On the other hand, with Exidris, where we're working very closely with the industry. And my impression is there's a lot being done. You know, it's really, it's not fair to say that, you know, the refiners, the industry, the banks are not doing anything. There's actually a lot being done. Several initiatives, and we can maybe discuss a few of them later, but this single story, to get back to that point, is really one which avoids or does not take, or does not give due justice to the fact that the industry overall has changed a lot. And to some degree, I even think that, you know, this blame approach and this some of the NGOs, they're not all the same, you know, and there's good intentions for sure, but very often their actions and these articles actually hurt those that they're supposed to help. You know, I mean, ASMs are small mines that, you know, that these are often families trying to make a living. And some of those articles and some of the activities in these, I would call it almost like these inquisitional approaches or black painting of the industry, create a situation where then the industry reacts in a way where they say, well, then we have to exclude working with those ASMs. Yeah. And that doesn't help the ASMs at all.
Definitely not. The public awareness, they do right now not know about what has been done, and maybe they are not interested. It's nicer to read a headline, Swiss refiners has imported some dirty black blood gold from I don't know where. The fact that the public does react immediately in a way that harm the reputation of precious metal dealer or refiner if a mistake happens, that makes that they do not touch this material from artisanal small-scale miners. There's enough material to source, so why should I take this material which is maybe from commingled with material from an illegal source? If you just start to blame somebody who tries to do something good, then everybody disengage. And disengagement is definitely the last resort in our industry, because as you said rightly, the artisanal small-scale mining community is around about 25 to 30 millions of people directly involved, another 100 millions indirectly involved. So it's an important community which this industry gives livelihood. So
maybe just to explain it to people that aren't that familiar with the industry. So these artisanal mines are small mines, and they exist all over the world. And like you said, it's actually a sizable industry. It's a lot of people that depend and make a living from producing those precious metals. There are problems in the way they produce it. Very often they produce and mine in very primitive ways, and help would be really good. What happens now, however, is that because of the requirements and the parameters that are set, and also this stigma that has been created where, you know, getting gold from those mines is a bad thing. What happens, obviously, these people will not stop necessarily producing the gold. They will continue to produce it, but they will sell it at a much lower price to others that will still take it. Parts of the world will still buy this gold. But so, to take a specific example, if you have a Colombian ASM, a small mine, and that small mine would like to work with someone like Argor-Heraeus that pays a really good price and also does clean business, helps them actually evolve and clean their shop up. That's a lot of cost for the refiner. It's complicated, and there's still that reputational risk. So the refiners in Switzerland focus on a few ASMs, and all the others are left out, and they are then kind of left out in the jungle to work with refiners and intermediaries that pay them a lot less. So basically, a good intention destroys their livelihood to some degree.
Gold is like water, it finds always its way. So that means these people, they have to continue to extract the gold and to sell it to a lower price. Researchers have shown that the price they get for an ounce of fine gold, maybe 60 to 65% of the fair market price.
If they don't work with the refiners that actually pay the good price.
Exactly.
Right.
So,
and it also goes back to something you said before, the fact that we have to watch out to not always look at things one-dimensionally, also in terms of time.
yeah.
You know, if you want to help someone, then you have to start and you have to let them evolve. But the West in particular, I think Europe and the US, with this, what we call the Washington Consensus, very often goes there and kind of preaches and says, you know, you have to reach these parameters, otherwise we can't do business with you. And that approach, to some degree, however, can be very destructive.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree with you. This has shown, for instance, for the Democratic Republic of Congo, with the Dodd-Frank Act. Congo is a very rich country of raw material. There you find everything. And to do business with them, the involved companies, they have to do a very, very stringent due diligence, and this stringent due diligence is just charged to the sources at the end, and they cannot fulfill these expectations.
So what did Dodd-Frank rule somehow raise the parameters or the requirements then suddenly? And
exactly.
Okay, and that then led to the fact that Congo gold was somehow excluded from the system at that point.
Yeah. Respectively, this is the other part of the medal. Everything which came under this label was good, and you don't do the work on the ground to help these people. You just take it and say, I'm Dodd-Frank audited, so what I bring to the market is good, even if it's maybe from a source which is not that good. So what really has to be done from the Western industrial world is to give them time to evolve, to develop, to get the knowledge how they can help themselves. For instance, these artisanal small-scale miners, you cannot ask them, if they have worked with mercury for decades, to work without mercury. You have to give them system that they can in a closed system work it, and then show ways how they can take it away completely. This took time, and this brings them from an illegal or criminal part maybe to a legal or formal position, and then they can evolve. But this takes time. And that is what I mean. We cannot expect immediately the perfect solution with all the paperwork done from these people who may be not able to read or to write or whatever. So it's impossible. Give them the chance to help themselves.
Yeah, Rome was not built in a day, and a perfect world will not be built in a day either. Solutions are more complex on the ground than you know, some people would like to believe, I guess. You have, on the one hand, you know, you have these ASMs. On the other hand, you also have a lot of large mines. You know, the giants in the industry like Newmont and so on. How does their business compare? I mean, they're doing a lot of work as well. I mean, they're doing. If you look at the way they do the business, they of course are able to reach those requirements. You know, so to some degree, those rules benefit the larger mines, right? Yeah.
Definitely, these big mines or industrial mines, they have as the biggest issue now the decarbonization.
They have a lot of requirements and challenges to deal with as well.
Exactly. If you have a look on the CO2 balance sheet of the Western companies, the biggest issue is step 3 footprint, and for a refiner, this comes from the mining material. They have, at least as I see it, no more to deal with human rights. This is not an issue for them. They have really to deal with environmental protection. You mentioned before, the cyanide has to be treated in the right way. They have to decarbonize their production and so on. And they have to pay attention that their material is not commingled with some illegal material from an artisanal small-scale mining operation.
I think maybe going back to what we said before, it's a process of improvement. A lot of the KPIs or key, you know, performance indicators, you know, are too strict in a sense that they're focused just on here and today. And it would be good to use, in general in business, you know, more of the trend approach. You know, basically looking at KPIs, how they evolve over time. And so that you can then benefit and support those that are moving in the right direction. and taking the efforts to improve. And that's something that doesn't really happen right now.
For time being, unfortunately not so. The best improver is globally seen, it's better than the best in class. So this is important. I see this problem, I call it this CO2 mania, which for the time being is happening in the end consumer market. Everybody wants to have recycled gold because the CO2 footprint is nearly zero, apparently, which is not the fact, because this gold has once been extracted as well. And with this, you just charge the problem. If you have a global view on the next, your balance sheet is okay because you use only recycled material. There's not enough of recycled material for the whole end consumer market.
What's the percentage, Christoph, of recycled material that we refine in Switzerland overall?
It's more or less 30%.
30%?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So really the biggest part of the refining going on in Switzerland is still mined gold.
Yeah, well, it depends. It very much depends of the definition of recycled gold. There's actually a lot of discussions around this issue, because is a good delivery bar coming from London recycled
So
material?
I was thinking of including those, because for me, refabrication and recycling,
then it's probably 60 to 70%.
So the biggest part is really that the output is material that was already above ground and not mined materials.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because so that means that CO2 wise, the overall CO2 or carbon budget is not that bad, because yes, it was at one point taken out of the ground, but we're talking about thousands of years,
Yeah, maybe only 2 years.
Or
maybe just a second before, because if it's a freshly produced bar, then you have the same CO2 footprint.
I actually had that conversation recently with a colleague of yours at the association, where I used the word recycled and I included refabricated.
Yeah.
And those things, actually at this point, recycled still includes refabricated. But rightfully she says, no, that's not correct, because refabricated is actually just remelting things. That's not recycled.
Exactly.
And so, overall there's some of that goes on as well.
Yeah.
And it's,
and you have to agree on clear definitions, and then you can talk about
terms matter.
And finding solutions of all these points.
So now we've spent some time on the negatives of gold, which does catch a lot of attention. There's a lot of positives about gold. If you look at history and you look at the role that gold played in our society and in terms of progress, it has a lot of positives. I recently read, someone mentioned the fact, and actually you actually mentioned that recently as well, the fact that the fiat currency system as it exists today has only been around since Bretton Woods, right? Where basically governments can pretty much create money without limitations to some degree. Gold, until then, gold had been around as money for many, many thousand years, and was a limiting factor to some degree as well.
Yeah, no, I think definitely that's why I'm since 35 years in the industry. Gold is, for me at least, and for the Western world, a symbol for positivity. Even gold, I read somewhere a headline, the history of the world is the history of gold and vice versa. And if we can build up an industry who works carefully, who takes the responsibility, then I believe gold will shine for the next 10,000 years again. I
mean, if without the use of money in, especially the exchange aspect of it, also the store value aspect of it, where gold has played a role just because of its natural benefits, it works very well. Without understanding history of gold, you don't really understand the history of money either. And anyone who watches what's going on right now, you mentioned inflation. Inflation the other side of inflation is the huge debt that governments have built up. It's one of the problems, in my view, we are dealing with today, is that governments have unlimited potential to create money. And the question is, are they doing that as responsibly as they should? One quote that I wrote down, because I thought we might touch on this, was by Ronald Reagan. He said, "No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. Government programs, once launched, never disappear. Actually, a government bureau is the nearest thing to eternal life we'll ever see on this earth." He always had a good sense of humor, but it's also very true. It's hard to get rid of those government programs, and we're spending money, and that lack of limitation is a huge problem. And so I agree with you. I think gold could play a bigger role in that regard as well in the future.
I hope so. This is a little bit also goes along with the World Gold Council program or vision, this 24/7, that gold has to be accessible every time for everybody. And
I love that vision. I mean, David Tate, the CEO of World Gold Council, his vision, I guess it's three elements of that gold 24/7. It's the element of integrity. So making sure that what you said before, the traceability, crucial. The transparency, also just the efficient capability of being able to have the audits, because at this point it's a paper nightmare. But so their digitalization plays a big role. The next thing he talks about is accessibility and fungibility. So there, I think his vision, and you can explain that better, but I think it goes really in the direction of giving everyone, also the retail market, a possibility to more actively and easily access and buy and trade gold.
Exactly, and the ground for this has to be trust from the investor at the end, as a small or the big one, in this commodity or in this investment product. And you said it, the product integrity is key in this. To exchange it easily is key, and therefore, yes, I like it also very much, this vision, because this shows that an old-fashioned product like gold investment can become really, especially in these difficult times as we live today, a new opportunity for everybody.
And I think for those watching, it's really important to understand that there's a lot being done. It's, the World Gold Council, the LBMA, the industry overall. I just got back from Singapore with Urs Rösli. And we met there also with the Singapore Bullion Market Association and the Swiss Association. I mean, you're working very closely with all of those as well. And there's a big effort going on in the industry at this point.
No, it's absolutely. But what I said, we are probably, for the time being, we are not successful in showing to the world what we are doing around all these issues. And there we have to work on it to really explain the market and explain what we are doing to tackle all these challenges.
One of the things that I was impressed with being at the LBMA conference for the first time several years back was the fact that you're looking at a global industry, but it's actually not. It's actually everyone knows each other. It's like it's. To what degree do you see that being challenged by the fact that we do have a bit of a change geopolitically in the world? We have more of a fragmentation. Globalization had its time. At this point, we do have some elements of de-globalization where, to some degree, the Cold War era has returned with the Western Bloc and the bloc around China. How is that affecting the precious metals industry?
Well, I think it will affect it quite heavily, because the precious metal comes from Africa, from Latin America, North America, wherever it comes from, all over the world to Switzerland, and we distributed it again. And if we just have to focus on the local market or a smaller market, then we have too much capacity here in Switzerland. So this is the impact for Switzerland probably.
So if you had almost a breakup of the markets, where you wouldn't be able to deliver to India, China.
So you see Russian is a very closed market. Oh, you cannot touch it. The same thing for China.
You're not able to touch it, meaning that from Switzerland we cannot deliver to those markets. So for the Swiss industry, that's quite a challenge. If that happens, it will be hard to get sufficient material, and or we might have too much capacity, which would mean there could be potentially a downsizing.
Yeah. For I think the good responsible source, the traceable material for the watch and the jewelry industry, there will still be
also for the Western banking probably.
For the Western
as well,
banking system probably, yes.
So if you look into the future, Christoph, and you think about maybe over the past 34 years that you've been in the business, what have the biggest changes been? And then maybe looking forward 10 years, where do you see the biggest changes ahead?
Well, the biggest changes, if I remember when I started in '88, 1 ounce of gold was worth $500. This is roughly 13,000 Swiss francs. Nowadays you pay 55,000 Swiss francs for 1 kilo. So this is the biggest, if you have the market price. And this shows that gold is
protection against inflation.
Exactly, exactly. And you got then, I remember, gold for free. No interest rates for gold lending. Now it costs. And then the second important things we talked before about the banks sitting in the middle of the chain, they stepped out. So the refiner became independent. Sitting in the middle, they are in fact the kind of gatekeeper for the industry with access to the source and the end consumer. And with this, I think this price increase and the globalization, the public awareness about our industry. So these are probably the three things, the biggest changes. I think words as I said, digitalization, traceability, and these were not only literally foreign words. Nobody cared about compliance as we do it today. And there's a big change. It does not mean that the refiner at that time were less responsible, but we had not the same instruments. It was not the same challenges at that time. And therefore, if I look to the next 10 years, what's going on now, we have carefully to observe the global situation. We said that the big challenges as the global warming, now the war in Ukraine, inflation, and therefore I come back to what I said before. We have to address the small things, creating a reliable industry, giving lived content to these words, digitalization, the vision of David, traceability, not just as a blah blah, but showing results. We have to find common solutions regarding decarbonization together with the big mines. We have to give livelihood to the artisan small-scale mines. So to create a good environment, good reputation for the industry.
If I think about the vision of 24/7 and just, I mean, if we really think about it, the idea I think is one where gold stock, inventory of gold is tokenized, and it's then brought onto an exchange using distributed ledger technology where it's easy to internationally transact, to buy, sell, trade, store, to maybe also collateralize and create interest type securities or tokens with gold backing. And by establishing that in a way where there is trust in that system, you now create, once again, to some degree, a gold-backed money system. And that's where I see gold being able to shine in the future, especially in a time when there are some geopolitical risks and political risks, and some people may need to have access to a money that is not run by the governments.
Yeah.
And there I see a huge role. And the good thing also, I think, even in a deglobalized world, using that kind of technology and being able to really use digitalization as a tool, where it's stored, where it's produced, is less important in a sense that, you know, the gold flows digitally and is stored in safe places. And that's where I see a huge role for Switzerland, for example. I think places like Switzerland, Singapore, Canada, you know, could be places where, you know, politically there's a certain level of safety and solidity where storage of gold then, you know, grows, London as well, but then there's trading and you know, transactions on top of that.
Yeah, I'm with you regarding this vision, and this shows that for the producing industry, if you can show firstly that the gold is stored somewhere in a safe place, and that you can show the provenance, so in 10 years' time probably all the gold is really traced. And then maybe the watch or the jewelry industry, they are able to buy some gold, not freshly mined, but freshly mined 10 years ago, and they will buy this gold definitely. So yes, with coming back to saying that Switzerland is one of the most important bullion centers in the world is probably not that wrong, also in 10 years' time.
I mean, where my hope goes, and I've told you this before, is, you know, with Exidras, is that to some degree that what we've built is a supply chain management solution that very much revolves around the topic of product integrity. And I just see Switzerland as the ideal hub for that kind of technology, not just with gold, but also with silver and other commodities. And that's where I think, you know, we also need to get excitement, create some excitement and fantasy with our authorities. And I see some of that. You know, I think the discussion there, I'm not sure how you experience it, but so far in my actions or interaction with our authorities in that context, it's been very positive. They're very supportive and very knowledgeable.
Yeah, I agree with you. This is the discussion with them, with the authorities, is very positive. And if you can show them solutions, they usually they are with you. So they listen and they want to create a positive environment for this kind of industry. And happy to learn what you just said, because this gives a huge, or could give a huge positive impact for Switzerland as a industrial hub. Because if you think about all these big trading industry, not just gold,
commodities in general.
Think about what happened with Trafigura. That is
exactly.
They could probably
have been avoided.
Exactly. So I'm very happy to learn.
No, I think, I mean, for us, if I think of the future, one of the things I would like to avoid is, you know, I've been in the wealth management business for a long time now, and we are drowning in paper. We are drowning in bureaucracy and regulations that are just going too far. You know, they're not adding value anymore. And the precious metals industry so far has not been that heavily regulated. So there's a huge opportunity to avoid in the precious metals industry what has happened in the financial industry, you know, where we preemptively and proactively use digital tools to not drown in paper, and you know, to create a system that allows compliance and auditability in an efficient way. And that's the huge opportunity that we have. And I think if we're able to do that, and I think we will, then I think there's a good future ahead. Otherwise, margins will, just like in the financial industry, will become smaller and smaller, because you're spending more and more time on filling in reports and forms for governments, and that's not the right way to go.
No, definitely not. So I hope that you will succeed in creating this system, because yes, I think the paperwork we have to carry out is just
it's becoming too much.
It's too much, and therefore bringing together or creating this trust with good systems, with people who you trust in, is the perfect solution. At the end, you need people.
And your work there is very important. So I don't think you'll be less busy than you were during your time at Argor, because you really, to some degree, you know, the associations, the leaders of the industries have to bring the different players together, to come together to create the governance for that digital standard, for the standard rules and vision. And over the past few years, I've seen huge progress there, and I hope it continues.
I hope so. No, I definitely. My work is not that much that it used to be, because there's no more paperwork right now. But happy to be able to contribute to really create a good platform for the Swiss precious metal industry. Absolutely. And hopefully even more. So this
sounds good.
Is my wish.
We're getting towards the end of our discussion. This was very interesting. Maybe as a closing question, just in general, where do you see the biggest? I mean, you have children and not grandchildren, right?
Not yet.
Not yet, but no. Still waiting, like me.
Yeah.
But so for your children also, where do you see the biggest challenges and opportunities ahead?
The opportunity is still, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I think hard work, be hardworking people who try to do something with empathy and enthusiasm is still a positive thing where they can succeed, whatever they do. I always tell to my children, to my kids, it's not important what you do, but if you decide to do it, be the best in what you do, and try to have fun. It's hard work. Life is not always fun, but try to do the best.
I like Arthur Ashe's motto there, and let me get it right. I think he says, you know, take what you get, use what you have, and do what you can. Yeah. Kind of in a sense that, you know, be satisfied and grateful for what you get and work with it.
I would agree. This is, be curious, try to apply yourself and enjoy what you're doing. This is what I told them, and at the end it's...
Everything will be fine.
Yeah, for me,
things will work out. You know, to some degree I agree. It's because of the media, you know, and politics, there's to some degree a very negative narrative in the world, and it's I think it's overly negative.
This is exactly being positive, to enjoy, celebrate also small successes. This is my message, and what we have talked about before. It's stories matter at the end, and stories change perception, and therefore, if you always have fog around yourself.
A what?
Fog.
Yeah.
Well, I thought when I came up this morning...
there was a lot of fog. That's why we were up here in Edmonton.
I saw afterwards,
because we wanted an office above the fog of Zurich.
No, but it's exactly, you can enjoy little things if they happen, and then celebrate them.
Christoph, thank you so much. For your
pleasure.
time. Thanks for coming here and for this conversation. And now let's go back to helping revive and build the precious metals industry. Thank you for everything you do.
Thank you, Frank.
Thanks, Christoph.
Thank you.